Chapter 14. The Embrace of Darth Drexler. Darth Drexler was not an easy man to categorize, which suited him fine. Born at Auschwitz on January 15, 1944, to a Jewish mother and a Nazi biophysicist father he never knew, he had spent 70 years accumulating a life that had defied simple description. He held advanced degrees in chemistry and molecular physics from Berkeley, a security clearance most people didn't know existed, and a publication record consisting of exactly one book, Engines of Destruction, an anarchist treatise on the dismantling of global institutions that had met with indifference upon its release in 2001. He kept a ramshackle property in the desert south of Ridgecrest, California, and a rundown studio apartment in San Francisco's Tenderloin, because it was affordable and because the scenery there reminded him of something he needed to be reminded of regularly. He drove a Toyota MR2, fast, simple, and ugly enough not to be bourgeois. He was short, dark, and carried the kind of ambiguous ethnic looks that made people uncertain where to place him. El Salvador? Lebanon? He also had large, dark, unsettling eyes. His hair had been hopeless since adolescence. He had surrendered to it early and worn it in a ponytail ever since. He was not, by conventional measure, easy to look at. He had never particularly cared. He believed that revenge was the first step in forgiveness. He practiced holding grudges as a spiritual discipline, finding in sustained hatred a continuity that other sources had failed to provide. He had been a drug dealer in school, a lone wolf anarchist for 3 years after graduating, responsible for a series of unsolved arsons and incendiary bombings in Berkeley in the mid-1970s. He had survived heroin addiction. He no longer drank or used anything, though his mind remained perpetually occupied with the theoretical design of the ultimate drug, the zero-gravity bliss of heroin, married to the spiritual panorama of psilocybin. It was an intellectual obsession he had no particular intention of acting on, probably. He had never married. He never wanted to. He loved Marina Stepanovich, a bipolar, bisexual Russian mathematician with a split personality and an obsession with non-dualism, with the full knowledge that at least half of her loved him back, which was the best quality of love he had ever encountered. They rarely saw each other. He'd never been entirely sure she wasn't a spy. The ambiguity suited him. He did not make up his mind. He waited to be swept away. It was a Tuesday night at Rosella's Jazz Club in the Fillmore district, and Darth was doing what he did best in his off hours, sitting alone with spicy Ethiopian food, dim atmosphere, and old-school jazz, letting the music replace everything else. The drummer was particularly good. He had almost forgotten where he was when he became aware that a woman across the room was watching him. She was striking, a beautiful black woman with long natural hair, her gaze direct and unhurried. He realized with a small jolt she had been watching him watch her. He glanced away toward the drummer. When he looked back, she was standing in front of him, and then she was sitting down across from him as though she had been invited, which she had not. He found her forwardness disconcerting for approximately 3 seconds. Then he looked into her eyes and forgot to be disconcerted. "Darth Drexler," she said. "I'm Abigail Franklin. I've had my eye on you for some time." He said nothing. The witty comeback he would normally have ready did not arrive. His tongue appeared to have made other arrangements. "I've been watching you for years," she continued, as though his silence were entirely expected. "As far back as your Berkeley days. I know all about you. You've been a sort of pet project of mine." She let that land. I think you're ready now. You'll meet me tomorrow night. She stood, slung her leather jacket over her shoulder, and turned to go. He rose to ask where and when, and she simply turned back, winked once, and walked out the door. He stayed a while longer. The drummer was still good, though it no longer mattered. When he finally admitted to himself that his mind was entirely elsewhere, he went home and eventually fell asleep and dreamed of Abigail Franklin in the particular obsessive way he usually reserved for grudges. The next day passed at a distance. He did what was necessary and, when interrupted, forgot immediately what he'd been doing, losing several seconds each time before locating himself again. He felt worn and restless throughout. When night came, he finally intended to go to bed early. But then something shifted. A jolt of alertness moved through him, sharp and purposeful, and before he had consciously decided anything, he was outside walking. He found himself at his garage. He got into his MR2 and drove south on the 101 out of the city, not because he decided to, but because his hands seemed to know the way. He took the Moffett Boulevard exit into Mountain View, parked downtown, and walked to Dana Street. He passed the closed Dana Street Roasting Company and found himself entering Alberto's, a nightclub with a live Brazilian band mid-set. He paid the cover and stood just inside the doorway, scanning for a table amid the dancing, when a voice found his ear. "I knew you'd come." He turned. Abigail was beside him. She took his hand. "Come with me." A taxi was waiting outside. Jazz played low on the radio. They rode in silence for a few minutes before stopping at a complex of condos. Abigail led him to a unit, unlocked the door, and stepped aside to let him in. A spare studio apartment, bare necessities, adequate light. He sat on the bed. It occurred to him distantly that he had not said a single word to this woman. He wondered briefly whether he'd been drugged. The thought drifted past without alarming him. Abigail climbed onto his lap and held his wrists, not because she needed to restrain him, but perhaps as a formality. He felt as though he were already in a dream and had been for some time. He decided that that was exactly what this was, a dream, and he found the recognition oddly freeing. She nuzzled his neck. It hit him harder and faster than anything he had ever taken, stronger than the speediest psychedelic, deeper than the darkest heroin descent. He traveled far into an abyss of infinite darkness and then saw a point of light approaching, growing, expanding into a brilliance that should have been blinding and wasn't. Every sense ignited simultaneously. His mind opened into a knowingness vast enough to satisfy every question he had ever carried, and then it stopped completely, and he was back in his body, and Abigail was licking her lips. He raised his hand to his neck and felt nothing. Abigail smiled. "No, you haven't been using. You haven't been drugged. You're not dreaming. I just gave you a kiss. It was good for me too, honey." She settled back. "Now let's get down to business. You rant and rail against institutions, how you'd like to see them crumble. Let me help you start with the institution of reality." Her tone was direct, unhurried, almost clinical. "Tonight, you are going to die. I'm going to drain the life right out of you, and you are going to enjoy it. Then I'm going to bring you back. Not with CPR, with Vitae, my blood." She paused. "Vampires are real. We drink blood. We cannot survive sunlight. We are not immortal. We simply don't age. We heal quickly, and we are hard to destroy. There are rules you'll need to follow for a time, rules that benefit all of us. There are worse evils out there than anything you've imagined. She looked at him steadily. I've followed you for a very long time. I've noted your motives, your volatile feelings, your particular talents. I've been given authorization to bring you in. You have, shall we say, a high security clearance. The corner of her mouth lifted. Just relax and let go. Darth leaned back. Whatever this was, dream, trip, death, it felt more real than the last 10 years of his life. He had always waited to be swept away by something powerful enough to make rational thought irrelevant. He recognized the sensation now. He let go. Abigail took him apart completely. He traveled through matter, energy, space, time, and knowingness. The architecture of the universe unfolding before him. Every question he had ever held answered and illuminated simultaneously. And he soared higher and further into infinity until he was ripped suddenly back into his body, and all the beauty and bliss collapsed into horror and pain. A hunger unlike anything he had ever known tore through him, and he began to come apart at the edges. And then Abigail drove a sharpened wooden dowel through his chest with supernatural swiftness, and everything went dark. The first sensation to return was taste, like iron dissolved in something ancient. He smacked his lips and opened his eyes. Abigail. They were in a different studio apartment. You started a frenzy, she said without apology. I had to stake you for your own sake and mine. If you frenzy, I frenzy, and you'd have ended up dead. She placed a tube in his mouth, connected to an IV stand, the bag bright red with blood. Drink. You'll feel better. He drank. His mind cleared in a way that was paradoxically also a deepening of uncertainty, sharper perception, less solid ground. Abigail continued, You are now a vampire. There are many clans, each with different abilities. We are Bruja, the rebels. You crossed paths with some of us back in your Berkeley days during the drug years, though you wouldn't have known it. She settled into her chair. We operate within the Camarilla, a sect of vampires complete with a prince and the attendant bureaucratic nonsense. I have limited patience for institutions, as you know, but the Camarilla provides order and has its uses. We are ideally anarchs. We work within the Camarilla as far as it serves us and no further. She glanced at the nearly empty bag. Your old life has been handled. Your MR2 was found wrapped around a guardrail on the 101. Your body was identified. We have friends in the Mountain View PD. Darth Drexler is dead, officially and permanently. She gestured around the apartment. This is your home now. Next door is the Mountain View Scientology Center. It is run by vampires, with ghouls managing operations during daylight hours, bloodbound and useful. Your contact there is Karen Chartree. She'll give you small tasks to start with. Consider it temporary purpose while larger things take shape. The faintest smile. We have a great deal of time on our hands. She checked the bag. Dry. How about a topper? Darth sat with all of it for a moment. The new clarity, the new hunger, the new darkness settling around him like a coat that fit better than anything he had ever worn. He had spent his life waiting to be swept into something vast enough to matter. He suspected this qualified.